School. And tonight we are going to present on some Financial Aid 101. We have a guest speaker here from MIFA, and he's also the Vice President for Enrollment at Worcester State. So I'm going to hand it over. This whole presentation is going to be his show, and we'll have Q&A at the end, but I'm going to welcome Ryan Forsyth from Worcester State. Thank you.
Hi everybody, how are we doing? Oh wow, that's really exciting. Okay, all right, everybody just calm down. We're talking about financial aid. Can't get too excited about financial aid. Hi everybody, my name is Ryan. My day job is I am the Vice President for Enrollment at Worcester State University. Before that I was in Tennessee, before that at a private college, before that at a community college. And tonight though, I am not here as Worcester State. I am here as the Massachusetts Educational Finance Authority. I am a volunteer for them that just brings information out to Massachusetts towns and cities to help you learn about college costs and financial aid. So I'm just curious, who is in the room? Who here is a senior or parent of a senior? Ooh, almost everybody. All right, how about juniors? Juniors or parents of juniors? Okay, a few, great. Sophomores or freshmen? Ambitious, all right, good deal. How many folks here have sent a student to college before? Raise your hand real high. Keep them up. Everyone else, if your hand is still in your lap, look around, because these are the people that are going to help you. These are the experts. These are the folks that have done it before. And so we're really glad that you're here. If this is your first time, this is going to be really helpful information for you. If this is your second or third time, welcome back and God bless you. Folks, tonight we are going to be talking about a lot of information that is specific to college. Hello? Ah, yeah, everyone else already figured that out, didn't you? All right, I'll stop yelling and just talk normal. Tonight we are talking about college financing. We're talking about the cost of college and making college affordable with financial aid. So this is a stressful topic, right? Going to college, getting accepted to college, making sure that it's affordable. It's a stressful topic. So why do we do this? Like in 2024, why do we go to college? We go to college to get an education. We go to college to make future opportunities available to us. Perhaps you go to college just to increase that earning potential, on average $1.1 to $1.4 million over the course of a lifetime. But when we go to college, we're investing in ourselves, right? We're investing in ourselves with earning potential, we're investing in ourselves with education, we're investing in ourselves with the experience that happens during college. But how do you make a good investment? Buy low, sell high, right? So tonight is about helping you feel comfortable with a part of the college selection process that includes buying low. We don't want to pay extra for college. We want to make college affordable for you so that that investment in your young person or in yourself pays off after college. And so tonight, that's what we're going to do. If you came here for another reason, you are in the wrong presentation, folks. And again, I do represent MIFA. MIFA is the Massachusetts Educational Finance Authority. It's a quasi-state agency that has its whole mission around helping Massachusetts families know about college, learn about college, and help finance college. MIFA is in existence in this state for that purpose. If we were in New Hampshire or Rhode Island right now, we would not have this opportunity. So thank you to the school and to your guidance staff and Miss Angie for bringing MIFA here. This is a free program because MIFA provides all of its services for free. We're going to talk a lot about resources that MIFA makes available to you for free. If you are a QR person, feel free to take a shot of what's on the screen. If you're a note taker, feel free to write that down. A lot of information about social media, as well as free resources that are behind that QR code. So feel free to take a look at that. Tonight we are going to be going through a presentation that includes a lot of information. This presentation is going to be shared with your guidance staff later on, and they're going to have access to it. So if you are a picture taker, feel free. If you're a note taker, write it down, or you can get the PowerPoint from the guidance staff after tonight. As we go through the night tonight, I do want you to please feel very comfortable asking questions. We're going to be flying through a lot of information about costs, financial aid applications, financial aid, and a lot more. So feel free to ask those questions as we go. The reason for that is because I promise if you have the questions, someone else in the room does as well. So please feel very comfortable asking. This is the information we're going to cover tonight. We're going to talk about financial aid, where it comes from, what it is, how much it might be, how you get that financial aid, how do you pay for college after you receive financial aid, and as I mentioned to a couple of folks, at the end of the night, we've got a few free resources for you that gain access to a lot of free services that are out there to give you further help. So we're going to start tonight with the types of financial aid that are out there and where it comes from. It is important to know, starting right out the gate, there are 3 kinds of financial aid, and you see them listed there at the bottom of the screen. The 3 kinds of financial aid are grants and scholarships. That's one category, grants and scholarships, and we'll talk about the difference as we go through tonight. But grants and scholarships are basically free money. It's a gift. It's money that's given to you or given to your student as a gift to help them pay for college, right? College costs money. College is going to charge you a bill. And if your bill at your college is $20,000 and you get a gift, a scholarship or a grant or a gift of financial aid, that can bring that $20,000 price tag down. So, scholarships and grants are free money. Loans are exactly what they sound like. They are borrowed money. Money that is borrowed now helps pay for that college cost today, and that loan is paid back someday later on. And the third kind of financial aid is work study. How many folks have heard of work study? You've heard that term before? Yeah, just about everybody. So work study is a kind of financial aid, and that's good to get in your head now. Because we all know what work study is. It's an opportunity to work while you're in college, while you're studying, and receive a paycheck. But in order to have that opportunity, you have to apply for financial aid and receive financial aid, because work study is financial aid. When we go through tonight, we're going to talk a lot about loans. We're going to talk a lot about scholarships and grants, but this is the last time we'll talk about work study. And so I want to mention that work study is different than the other 2 kinds of financial aid. Because other kinds of financial aid, like grants and scholarships and loans, they help pay down that college bill. Work study is very different. Typically, work study does not pay down your college bill. Instead, work study is an offer for employment where if your student works 5 hours, 7 hours, 10 hours a week, they get a paycheck. They get money in their pocket. It goes direct deposit or a check or a paycheck right into their bank account, and it can be spent on whatever your student wants. Now, if your student wants to spend it on the bill, so be it. That's fantastic. But your student might want to spend it on pizza, and that's their choice because it's a paycheck. It's money that goes into your bank. So that's the last time we'll talk about work study tonight, but the scholarships and the grants we're going to spend a good amount of time on because those are our 2 major types of financial aid. And we're going to start with the one that nobody wants to talk about. We're going to get it right out of the way right at the beginning. Student loans. In the United States, it is very common for students to go to college. Approximately 60% of high school graduates go on to college after high school at some point. And of those students that go to college, it is extremely common for students to borrow money to help pay for college now, and then pay back that college later. Now, in borrowing for a higher education, in borrowing for college, there are 100 different loans out there. If you or I walked into our favorite bank or credit union right now, wherever you do your banking, you could probably obtain a student loan. Not all banks, but many banks will offer you a student loan. The Bank of America student loan, the Citizens Bank student loan, the Rockland Trust Bank loan, right? You can get a student loan just about anywhere. But the reason that we put this loan up here is because this is a student loan that's unique. This is a student loan called a direct loan. It comes from the federal government. The federal government is the lender, the guarantor, the servicer at the end of the loan. The federal government is the bank. Now, the reason that we put this one up there is because this is a pretty unique loan. Think about if right now you or I walked into our bank and asked for a loan. Would we be given that loan immediately? Probably not. You'd fill out an application. Maybe you'd provide some information, right? And then the bank would assess you for eligibility. They would check a debt-to-income ratio. Maybe they'd ask for some collateral. Maybe they'd look at your credit score, right? That's how we normally borrow when we borrow from a bank. This loan, though, is designed for 17-year-olds that are going to college. 17-year-olds don't have collateral. They don't have good debt-to-income ratios. They don't have a credit score that's worthy of borrowing. And so how do they get this loan? Well, you see it there on the screen. This loan is provided to students without any type of credit check or any other consideration. The only things that are necessary to obtain this student loan by a 17 or 18-year-old is to fill out a financial aid application, be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, and go to college in the United States. That's it. And so this is a loan that is available to just about every college student everywhere. Now, these loans are fixed interest rate loans. The interest rate is set every year, but it's an interest rate that's fixed on the day that it's set, typically in the summer. And so for the year right now, we have a 6.53. You all just heard that the Fed decreased the prime rate again today, so that interest rate will be lower next year. It'll be 6.0, 5.7, something like that. But this is a fixed interest rate loan that a student can get without creditworthiness, and it is a student loan that is applicable to college. Let's look over here on the right. Over here, these are the amounts that a student can receive. Now, as a freshman, most of your students are going to be freshmen next fall. As a freshman, you can borrow $5,500 in this loan. Now, is that going to cover the cost of Boston University? No, that's a drop in the bucket. But is that going to cover a substantial amount of attending a community college? Yeah, it absolutely is. So you've got a good amount of financial aid here just right off the bat before we even talk about all the other kinds of financial aid that are out there. Now I'm going to mention a couple of things. Really good things about the loan: no payments while you're in college, repayment after you leave, typically 6 months after you leave college, and this loan has the potential to be what's called subsidized. You can see here, the loan comes in two forms, either subsidized or unsubsidized. As we go through the night tonight, we're going to talk about how a family like yours can be eligible for what's called need-based financial aid. If your family becomes eligible, and we'll talk about how that happens in a minute, if your family becomes eligible for need-based financial aid, then you can receive this loan in a subsidized form. And what that means is the federal government pays that interest for you while you're in college. So now this loan becomes a 0% interest loan. 0% the entire time your student is in college. Interest only begins to accrue after you leave college. So, we don't like to talk about student loans, but student loans are a big part of making college affordable, and this is one of the best ones out there. I won't be going over all the private loans that are out there. Lots and lots of ones. The ones we've already mentioned: Citizens Bank, Bank of America. But there's many more out there which you can explore, everybody can explore. You just want to pay real close attention to the terms of those loans. When do you have to pay them back? What's the interest rate? And maybe do a good job of comparing it to this one, because this is probably one of the best ones out there. Yes, sir?
If a family have a multiple students attending the college with the subsidized ones, then
Meaning, could both multiple children receive them? Yes. So the question down front is, if you have multiple children going to college, can you receive this loan for multiple children? And the answer is yes. So if you have an 18-year-old going to college and a 20-year-old going to college, they can each receive the amount that's shown over here on the right based on what year in school they are. So if your freshman goes in, they can receive $5,500, and if you have, say, a senior in college, they can receive $7,500. So both can be eligible. Yes, sir?
how about the income of the family? Is that like if you have multiple children go to college?
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'm going to hold that question. The question was, what about the income of the family? How does that make you eligible for this loan? And if you don't mind, that's a long answer that's going to be answered as we go through the night tonight. So we're going to hold on that one if you don't mind. All right, let's keep going. All right, so where does financial aid come from? It comes from three major sources. The first one is the federal government. We've already talked about one kind of financial aid that comes from the feds, that direct loan. But there's many different kinds of financial aid that come from the federal government, and you can see them there in the top left-hand corner of the screen. Pell Grants, direct loans, the work study that we talked about, all of that is a form of financial aid that comes from your federal government. Because we're in Massachusetts, and I bet most of you are Massachusetts residents, the Massachusetts Massachusetts Office of Student Financial Aid also offers a great deal of financial aid. That's just for us. That's just for us Massachusetts residents. That's not for people from Rhode Island or New Hampshire. It's only available because we live right here. Yes, ma'am?
Is it money that's available to use in schools, not in
The question down front is the money that's available from the state of Massachusetts only able to be used at colleges that are in Massachusetts? And the answer is it depends. There's different kinds of financial aid that are offered by the state. Some are only able to be used in the state, and some are able to be used outside of the state. The third place that financial aid comes from is colleges and universities. So somebody yell out a college your student is interested in. Wheaton, down in Norton. Wheaton College, is that the one? There's two, down in Norton? Yeah, okay, so Wheaton College, really cool college, right near Great Woods, which is no longer called Great Woods, right? What's it called? Xfinity Center. You see how old I am? Right next to Mansfield in Norton, Massachusetts is a nice little liberal arts college called Wheaton. Really nice place. And Wheaton College has their own financial aid. They offer the Wheaton Dean Scholarship or the Wheaton Trustee Scholarship. That kind of financial aid is right from the college itself. Now, why would a college give out its own financial aid? If there's financial aid from governments like Massachusetts and the feds, why would a college give out its own financial aid? Well, especially for your higher cost institutions, you're going to expect to receive some kind of discount. Right? This is the time when I say, what month are we in? In November, now is not the time to count out the expense of college. Even if you're in your senior year and that $80,000 price tag is really scary, now's not the time to count out the expense of school. And why is that? Because colleges offer financial aid. And your more expensive colleges are more likely to offer more financial aid. So if you're looking at, what's the closest community college to here? Quincy? Quinsigamond Community College, right nearby. The price tag is about $9,000, I think. And they have lots of financial aid lately, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then right down the street in the opposite direction, heading towards Boston, is Northeastern, which I think is $80,000 a year. You are highly, highly more likely to receive a significant amount of financial aid from the $80,000 Northeastern, whereas at the community college, you should expect to receive less. And that's why in November, we tell every family, don't count out the expense of school. Consider the expense of school. Think about applying if that's the place that you like. But just be realistic about that may or may not be affordable once you get your financial aid. So colleges are going to offer financial aid. Last but not least, there are many, many scholarships out there that come from other organizations. So the big three places that financial aid comes from, the feds, the state, and the colleges. But the last category is 100, 1,000, 10,000 different organizations. Scholarships. Where can a scholarship come from? Well, a scholarship can come from a foundation. Maybe a foundation has put together some money and they give out scholarships to students. Scholarships can come from the local Lions Club or Kiwanis Club right here in town. Scholarships can come from big organizations like Walmart or Nike. And scholarships can come from just about any source you can think of. Oh, the last one is possibly your employer. Your employer might offer a scholarship for you or your child. So there's scholarships, lots and lots of scholarships out there. And so how do you find them? Well, I'm going to ask you to find, when you want to find a scholarship, you do not use Google. If you or I went on our phones right now and typed in "show me scholarships," we would get 300,000 results. And first of all, some of those aren't applicable to your child. They're just not eligible. But second, and more importantly, some of those 300,000 results are scams. They're not scholarships. They're web portals that are looking to collect your information and maybe steal identity, charge you to apply for a scholarship. So you don't want to use Google for scholarship searches. What do you want to use? These right here. MIFApathway.org is a curated list of scholarships that is kept by MIFA, the organization that I volunteer with. Additionally, there's a separate scholarship curation site called fastweb.com. Both of these take in scholarships from outside. They don't award scholarships. This is not from MIFA. It's not from an organization called FastWeb. These are just portals. They're places where scholarships are stored, and most importantly, they've been vetted. which means on here you can trust that what's there are real scholarships that are not trying to steal your identity. Now on these big national websites, you're going to find the Target scholarship, you're going to find the Nike scholarship, you're going to find the Chipotle scholarship, right? The big ones. What you're not going to find on these big websites are the local scholarships. So right here in town, I am sure that you have scholarships from nonprofit organizations, from the library, from the Lions Club. It's very common for towns to have smaller scholarships right here in town. Those scholarships, thankfully, your high school organizes them for you. They know about where the scholarships are, and they collect them after the new year. So sometime around February 1st, you're going to be able to go on to the resources that the school makes available here and see those local scholarships. Local scholarships are usually smaller, maybe $500, maybe $1,000, whereas the big old scholarships from Target and duct tape and wherever, these might be huge scholarships, $10,000, $20,000 scholarships. But remember, these big national ones, you're competing with hundreds, maybe thousands of people for those. Here in town, you might only be competing with your classmates. And so we always suggest looking at the big scholarships that are out there and the local scholarships that are right here in town. Yes, ma'am?
Is there an easy way to tell if the college you're applying to takes into consideration other scholarships and reduces your aid versus lets you just take off what you have to pay?
Yeah, good question. I met this young lady earlier in the night, so I know that you have sent a college student to college before, and that's why I know that's a very informed question. For everybody else, we're going to walk through this question. She just asked, is there a way to find out whether or not your college does what's called financial aid displacement, where when you receive a scholarship, it makes another kind of financial aid go away? That doesn't sound very nice, does it? A lot of colleges do it. The easy answer to that question is every college does that. The harder, more nuanced answer to it is the way in which financial aid, forms of financial aid, displace other types of financial aid depends on a number of factors. One, how much the college costs. Two, how much financial aid you have received. And three, the kinds of financial aid you've received. Let me give you an example. If you're attending a college that, let's say, costs $20,000, and you've received some financial aid, a little grant, a little scholarship, a little loan, and maybe it's covered $12,000 out of that $20,000. It's good news. But then you receive a scholarship for $50,000, way more scholarship money than you need. That college is legally bound. Federal laws and regulations tell that college they can't let you keep $62,000 worth of financial aid for a $20,000 a year school. So, in that very exaggerated scenario, you would have decreased financial aid in order to make room for the big scholarship. In another scenario where you're attending a $90,000 a year school, you're getting $12,000 worth of financial aid and you get a $6,000 scholarship, well, they're going to let you keep it all because it has not exceeded the cost of attendance for that school. So that was a very good question, very detailed answer, but it really does depend on a lot of scenarios. Yes, sir?
So, just following up on that, it all depends on what the cost of the college is. If it's $50,000 and you know that and it's days, there's a lot.
The question is sort of trying to simplify my very detailed answer, and it's not quite that simple. The question is, if the college costs more than the financial aid, does that avoid financial aid displacement? And the answer is maybe. It depends on the cost of the college, it depends on the amount of financial aid, and it depends on the types of financial aid. I'll give you another scenario. One of these forms of financial aid from the federal government is grants. If you receive a grant from the federal government, it is what's called an entitlement. Similar to the way in which a veteran is entitled to the GI, post 9/11 GI Bill. You're entitled to it. It is yours. No one can take it away from you. And so if you receive a Pell Grant from the federal government and then receive a big old scholarship, well, the law says you have to be able to keep both of them. Okay, so now that could exceed the cost of your college. But what's more likely is you receive maybe a little scholarship from Massachusetts, maybe a little scholarship from the college, and then some big old scholarship from Nike. that would cause financial aid displacement, regardless of the cost of the college. So sorry, the answer is not simple. All right, we're going to keep going. Here we go. Oh, one more. Yes, sir.
For the Massachusetts one, like, this is for UMass only or any college in Massachusetts?
Great question. So up in the top right-hand corner, the financial aid that comes from the state of Massachusetts, is that only for UMass? And the answer is absolutely not. That financial aid, the financial aid that comes from the state of Massachusetts, is available to us Massachusetts residents at all the college, at least all the colleges in Massachusetts, public, private, and some colleges outside of the state, depending on the kind of financial aid you receive. But definitely not exclusive to UMass. You can use it at Salem State, at Bridgewater State, at Boston University, anywhere. Yes, ma'am.
If you were going out of state, could you receive a grant or scholarship from the state government?
Oh, good question. Good question. Are you a senior in high school? That's a really good question for a senior in high school. If you are attending a college outside of Massachusetts as a Massachusetts resident, can you receive financial aid from that other state's government? And the answer is it's not common, but there are some states that do that. Vermont, as an example, offers financial aid to go to some of the Vermont campuses. I think it's just their public ones, where you can receive it regardless of the state that you live in. But other states, many other states, will say no. It's just for the residents of that state. Yes, sir.
Just to follow up on her question, do you have to explicitly apply for those kind of grants, or is that built in somehow?
Yeah, good question. So we're going to talk about applying for financial aid in a few moments. There are three major types of financial aid applications, and as long as you're filling out the application that's right for that college, then you would be considered for all the different kinds of financial aid we've talked about so far. But we'll get into more detail on that in a second. Let's keep going, folks. We're going to go through a couple of vocab terms now. The first one is merit-based financial aid, and right after that, we're going to talk about need-based financial aid, which we already mentioned. First, merit-based financial aid. This is financial aid that's awarded to you based on some kind of meritorious characteristic that you have. And you see some of the examples up there on the screen. Academics. If you have a 4.0 GPA, or a 3.9 or a 3.8, someone might want to give you a scholarship, might want to give you some merit-based financial aid to recognize that you've been successful academically. You've got a meritorious characteristic, and it's a 4.0 GPA. So that's a merit-based form of financial aid. It's a reward. It's a congratulations on something good you've done, right? Other merit-based aid, you see them listed up there on the screen. Athletics, artistic scholarships. So athletic scholarships, let's go there. If you throw the thing, run the thing, shoot the thing better than anybody else, then you might be able to receive a scholarship for doing that. Now, you might just get it simply because you are the point guard, or you are the quarterback, or you are the striker, whatever you are on that team. That college might be looking for that, and therefore gives you a reward, a merit-based form of financial aid, because you've got that athletic ability. And last but not least, artistic. If you play the tuba, or you are the best flag twirler out there, and you're going to a campus that is looking for a flag twirler or a tuba player, you can receive a form of financial aid for that because you are the best at that, or you're very good at that. Now, all of these forms of financial aid are given to you because you've got something, right? You've got something other people don't have. You've got good grades, or you've got athletic ability, or you've got artistic ability. But sometimes these forms of financial aid are tied to you doing that again, right? If you're the best quarterback in your division here at Shrewsbury, and you get a scholarship for playing football, well, they're expecting you to play football when you go to that school, right? And if you don't play football, guess what happens to your financial aid? It goes away. Same thing with grades. If you get a merit-based form of financial aid because you've got the 4.0, but then you get into freshman year and you just stink it up, all D's, then you can lose your merit-based financial aid. So, merit-based financial aid is fantastic. It's a reward. It's something that when you're at the barbecue or you're at the Christmas party, this is the one that people talk about, right? My son got a scholarship because he's got good grades, or my daughter got it because she's the best field hockey player. Merit-based financial aid. Thing is, you want to watch it real close. because it usually has strings. You have to do something in order to keep it. That is extremely different than need-based financial aid. Need-based financial aid has nothing to do with characteristics that you have, nothing to do with your athletic ability, nothing to do with your grades, and instead has everything to do with a calculation of your family's financial need. Now, if I asked you to raise your hand, you shouldn't raise your hand, but if I asked you to raise your hand, who in here has financial need, everybody's hand would go up, right? Nobody thinks they don't have financial need. But this is calculated using a standardized federal formula. We're going to talk in a minute about applying for financial aid, where you give your information to the federal government. They put it through a standardized algorithm, standardized formula, and out pops a determination of your family's financial need, usually in comparison to other families across the country. And so think about it this way, just as a rule of thumb, think about it this way. If your income is very high, you receive less need-based financial aid because you have less need than other families. If your income is very low, you receive more need-based financial aid than other families because your need is higher. You have more financial need. That's need-based financial aid. Again, very different than merit-based. Merit-based is because you have a characteristic. Need-based is simply because you have a financial need as calculated by a standardized formula. And you can see some of the details here. This can be grants, it can be scholarships, it can be the subsidized direct loan. That 0% interest loan that we talked about a few moments ago. All that is need-based financial aid. So far we have talked about the kinds of financial aid that are out there. We've talked about where it comes from, and in a minute we're going to move on to a different topic. So if you have any questions, please do ask. Yes, sir.
The need-based is a multiple students who have like a different formula or special consideration.
The question is, I think the question is, if you have multiple students in school, does that affect the calculation of the need-based financial aid that you receive? For those of you that have sent children to college before, you are expecting me to say yes. And unfortunately, starting last year, the federal government changed this. And so, starting just last year, now having multiple children in college does not positively affect your eligibility for financial aid. We all just voted a few days ago. Remember that topic when you go back to the polls in a few years, because that is your federal government that made that decision to change the rules, where now if you have 1 student, 2 students, 3 students, 5 students in college, it does not increase your eligibility for financial aid. All right, let's talk about applying. That was a fun topic. Let's switch topics. Applying for financial aid. So when we want financial aid, we have to apply for it. Just like you apply for a job, just like you apply for a loan, we are filling out applications to receive financial aid. And when we fill out those applications, it is extremely important that we meet the timelines that are set typically by the colleges. In a minute, we're going to talk about all the different kinds of financial aid applications that are out there, how to fill them out, how to submit them. But before we even get to that, we've got to talk about deadlines. This college process is complicated, right? You have to find colleges you like, you have to apply to colleges for admission, you have to wait to see if you're admitted, then do this financial aid stuff. It's complicated. Colleges often will be very flexible with you. For instance, if you've applied to college now, you will likely receive your admission decision relatively soon. But if you choose not to apply to college until March or April, you can still typically get into hundreds of different colleges because the admission deadlines aren't very important. They're encouragements, but they're not requirements typically for some colleges. Financial aid, that's not the case. Financial aid, every single college has a financial aid application deadline. And I promise you at every single college, if you miss it by a day, you immediately become less eligible for financial aid. So, each college is going to have different deadlines for financial aid applications. Some of them can be as early as December. We're not that far away from December. And some of them might not be until March or April. But what you want to do is you want to pay really close to those deadlines. At the bottom of the screen here is a URL for something called an application manager. This is a glorified spreadsheet. It's something that's made available to you by MIFA, and it is available for free. You can download it right now. And all this is designed to do is to keep you and your student organized on the deadlines related to college admission applications and college financial aid applications. As we go through tonight, you're going to see this stuff gets complicated. And so you don't want to miss a deadline even by a day, because you give that call, they will tell you that you are ineligible for some forms of financial aid. So deadline's really important. The college application manager will help you organize everything so you don't miss any deadlines. Let's talk about financial aid applications. How many folks here have heard of the FAFSA? You've heard of it? How many folks know what it is? Yeah, okay, all right, good, good, good. So we're not going to go over the super duper basics, but we are going to go over a few basics, like the FAFSA is an application. It's not a government entity, it's not a bunch of people, it's not an office, it's an application. The same way if you went to try to go work at McDonald's, you would fill out the paper to apply to work there, right? That paper is the application. The FAFSA is the application. That's all it is, just an application. Now the FAFSA is an acronym. It stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Anybody want to guess how much it costs to fill out the free application for federal student aid? It is $0. If you are on a website that is trying to charge you $65 to fill out this application, you're on the wrong one and they're trying to steal your information. The FAFSA is just that. It's an application. And anybody want to yell out their guess as to who the FAFSA belongs to? The student. That's right. Thank you very much, whoever that was. The FAFSA is the student's application. Now, almost everybody in here is a parent. If you are going to help your student fill that out, that's fantastic. But this is their application. The reason I mention that is because there are places on the application where your student has to put information about themselves, some including Social Security number. I can't tell you how many FAFSAs we receive where mom's Social Security number is in the student's Social Security number field. This is the student's application, so we want to make sure our students are helping complete it. They can definitely get your help. It's very, very common for parents to help, but it is the student's app. So the FAFSA is available only online, or I should say, it is most conveniently available online, and it's only at that website, FAFSA.gov. The FAFSA is completed every single year, and it's required, it is the only way to receive financial aid at almost every college. So every year we're going to fill out the FAFSA, and every year we're going to fill out the FAFSA for whichever college we go to. In a minute, we're going to talk about other financial aid applications that are sometimes required in addition to this, but the FAFSA you're going to complete no matter which college your student goes to.
What are the means required by all colleges? Like, even if we are not, if we don't do FAFSA, we won't get any aid, or we not just federal aid?
Good question. So the question was, if the FAFSA is required by all colleges, and we go to a college that we don't complete it for, does that mean we miss out on all financial aid, or just miss out on federal financial aid? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on the college. The FAFSA is required for certain kinds of financial aid, no matter which college you go to. So, the direct loan we talked about earlier, you have to have the FAFSA. The Pell Grant, which is the largest federal grant, need-based federal grant that's out there, requires the FAFSA. All of the state of Massachusetts financial aid requires the FAFSA. So you can see that even though a college might require another financial aid application, you're always going to complete the FAFSA no matter where you go. And if you don't, then you will almost definitely miss out on some kinds of financial aid. Yes, sir?
Very basic question. So you fill out the FAFSA online, you fill out every college website.
Yes, the FAFSA, the question is, do you fill out the FAFSA once, or do you fill it out every year? And the answer is, you do fill it out every year. The FAFSA is required.
You have to fill it out for every college, or you fill it out once and apply to every school?
Good question. The question is, do you fill out the FAFSA once, or do you fill it out for each one of the colleges that you're considering? And the answer is, you fill out the FAFSA once a year, and then send it to as many colleges as you want. So this year, for your students going into freshman year next year, you'll fill out the FAFSA one time, and then you can send it to 3, 4, 6, 8 colleges, as many as you want, so they all receive your FAFSA. Thank you. Sir? Is the FAFSA required for merit-based scholarships? I'm going to keep saying this, my favorite government answer, it depends. The answer is dependent on the college. So at some colleges, you can receive a merit-based scholarship simply by applying for admission or just having an interview with an admissions counselor. And at other colleges, they require the FAFSA along with other information to award merit scholarships. So it depends. Yes?
Does it cost to send the FAFSA information to each college?
Does it cost money to send the FAFSA to each one of your colleges? The answer is no. The FAFSA is completely free. So, yes?
Sorry, quick question on the portal that they're still open to using. So it's available, the form for the application is available on December 1st, but then you said you should have to look
Yeah, so the FAFSA had, for decades, maybe not decades, for a long time, it's been available on October 1st. That's the starting line. That's the first day it's available, and you're able to start filling it out. In your future years, when your students are sophomores and juniors and seniors, it will probably be available on October 1st. However, this year, it is not available until December 1st. December 1st. Now, if you go on to FAFSA.gov and you happen to see it there, or a version of it there, before December 1st, MIFA and I am suggesting you leave it alone. Because last year, they made major changes to the FAFSA that basically broke it. And it's still partially broken and they're fixing it. So the federal government has told us that on December 1st, it will be available, it will be ready, it will be accurate, it will be useful. But if you happen to see it before December 1st, MIFA's advice at this moment is, do not complete the FAFSA before December 1st. It was really bad last year. FAFSA's getting lost, people's private information going into God knows where. So we are really suggesting that you leave it alone until it is 100% guaranteed by the feds December 1st this year. And in future years, October 1st. We're going to talk a little bit about the information that goes on the FAFSA in a minute. We're going to talk about the income and asset information that goes on the FAFSA. But first, we're going to talk about the way in which it's completed. Earlier, we said the FAFSA belongs to who? The student. So the student is going to be the first one to fill out the FAFSA before mom or dad. So your student is going to be making the FAFSA first. And then they're going to be inviting you as a contributor, someone that comes in later and adds information to the FAFSA. Now, this is one of those growing up moments, right, where the FAFSA belongs to junior, not to mom or dad, and mom or dad are going to contribute to it later on. Now, the FAFSA is something that the contributors have to contribute to, and there's a 45-day window to complete it. If you let the FAFSA linger for longer than 45 days, the federal government tells us that they're going to delete them and you have to start over. So you can go in, you can save it, you can make some progress, and then wait for mom to do her part, but it does have a 45-day window before it expires. One last thing before we go, and that is we're going to talk a lot tonight about all of the resources MIFA makes available. This is one more right here. If you want to spend a lot of time learning about the FAFSA, there is a free webinar on MIFA's website. It is called the FAFSA webinar. Lots and lots of detailed information. But tonight, we're just going to give you enough information to be dangerous. You ready? Here we go. In order to complete the FAFSA, you need a username. And you need a minimum of 2 usernames per family. The federal government in the United States expects for every high school student, every traditional college-age student that is going to college, that they will include the information on the FAFSA about at least one of their parents, if not 2. Now we're going to talk about which parents go on the FAFSA in just a moment. But just for a moment, remember that some parents' information typically has to go on every FAFSA for every student. So to do that, that means you need at least 2 usernames. One for the student and one for at least one of the parents. Again, we'll talk more about the parents in just a moment. That username to get into your FAFSA is called an FSA ID. Just like the username or password that you use to get into your bank, this just happens to be the one for the FAFSA. FSA ID. Now the FAFSA itself is not available until December 1st. However, the username, you can apply to get a username right now. You can apply to get that FSA ID at fsaid.ed.gov or this longer URL right there if you want to take a picture. In order to get an FSA ID, the FSA ID is something, again, that the student and the parent need in order to complete the FAFSA. You're going to need a few pieces of information. You're going to have an email address. Each email address is independent to each FSA ID. So if you're a family that has tried to put together like a one Gmail email so that everything goes to one place, don't use that one. Use your own personal email to set up your FSA ID. And notice that it will be required for each person that's completing it and will typically require a social security number. If you do not have a social security number, that is okay. However, the use of your social security number, especially if it's one that has been current for more than a month, if you've just received it, it might not be active. But if you have a social security number that has been in place for more than a month or your entire life, you want to make sure to include that because it will link right to your FAFSA. So what goes on the FAFSA? We've got the username now. It's starting to be December 1st. So now we're going to log in, we're going to go in and see this application. Remember, the FAFSA is just an application, so we're going to be filling it out with information that the federal government requires. And so what goes on there? Well, first of all, some basic information about the student. Name, rank, serial number, all the normal stuff to identify yourself. Date of birth, social security number. This is one of those times that you're going to be asked to put a social security number in a website. That's scary, but you definitely want to go ahead and do that. Without a social security number on the FAFSA, you are typically ineligible, not eligible for most financial aid. So you want to make sure you include your FAFSA, social. The FAFSA is going to ask for citizenship. The reason for that is because most federal financial aid is only available to individuals who are U.S. citizens, permanent residents, or under certain unique asylum statuses. So if you happen to be here as an undocumented student, or you happen to be here as someone that is on a visa, an education or work or any other kind of visa, then you typically are not eligible for financial aid from the federal government. If, however, you fall into one of those categories, an undocumented student, a minimally documented student, a DACA student, a student here on a visa, the state of Massachusetts offers financial aid to those students. And so there is a separate financial aid application that undocumented and minimally documented students can complete. It is called the, get this, MASFA. Really unique, just like FAFSA, but with an M at the beginning. So if you happen to be an undocumented student, you can complete the Massachusetts MASFA and receive financial aid from the state. If you are a citizen, permanent resident, or a student on asylum, a person on asylum, then you're going to provide your citizenship status here because that makes you eligible for federal financial aid. As it was pointed out earlier, we're going to include our colleges on here, as many colleges as you want. Remember, your student's looking at lots of different colleges right now, so it's totally normal to include 3, 6, 9, 10 different colleges on the FAFSA. That's going to cause your FAFSA information to go to all of those 3, 6, 9 colleges, and each one of them is going to come back and give you a financial aid offer. That way, in April, you can spread them out on the kitchen table and decide which college is most affordable. That is something that you're going to do now. So when you fill out that FAFSA after December 1st, you're going to list all those colleges. But I promise you, your students are going to change their mind. And they're going to want to add a college or take off a college. All that's very possible. You can go right back into the FAFSA afterwards, take some off, put some on, and that causes the FAFSA to be sent to the new colleges. Students are going to provide their information on their FAFSA. That probably makes sense, right? If the FAFSA belongs to Ryan Forsythe, then Ryan's going to put his information on there. But because the student, your student, is of traditional college age, the federal government is going to expect parental information to be on there. Now, there are some exceptions to that. If your student is over the age of 24, they do not have to provide parental information on the FAFSA. They are now considered their own adult, and therefore they complete the FAFSA on their own, or maybe with their new spouse. If your student is married, then they are independent from their parent for financial aid. If your student has their own child, then they are independent from their parent for financial aid. But you can see that none of those things are financial support. So it does not matter whether you as the parent give financial support to your student. Regardless of that, the federal government wants parental information unless your student meets one of those criteria. 24, married, has their own child. So, if a parent's information is required on the FAFSA, which parent's information goes on? Well, these are our scenarios. If a student has biological or adopted parents who are married, then both of those biological or adoptive parents' information is included on the FAFSA. And it does not matter whether those biological or adoptive parents are same sex or different sex. So if we have two parents that are the same sex, as long as they're married, and they are biological or adoptive, I assume, anyway, biological or adoptive, then both parents' information is going to go on the FAFSA. In the case of parents who live together, again, this is biological or adoptive parents. For biological or adoptive parents who live together, both parents' information is going to go on the FAFSA, regardless of whether they're married. So for some parents, they did not get married, very common in Canada, where you live together but you're not married. In this case, both parents' information goes on the FAFSA. Again, that's biological or adoptive parents. For divorced or separated parents, this is divorced or legally separated, not just physically separated, but for divorced or legally separated parents, the parent, the biological or adoptive parent that offers more than 50% of the student's financial support in the calendar year, in the last calendar year, is going to provide their information on the FAFSA. The biological or adoptive parent that did not provide more than 50% of the financial support does not put their information on the FAFSA. Now, in that separated or divorced situation, if the parent that has been providing more than 50% of the support for that student in the last 12 months is now remarried, then the step-parent's information goes on the FAFSA. And last but not least, legal guardians of all sorts. Legal guardians that are assigned by the state, legal guardians that are assigned by a court, legal guardians that are family, legal guardians that are not family. Anyone that is a legal guardian who is not a parent or not an adopted parent, biological or adopted parent, does not put their information on the FAFSA. And I believe that is all the parental scenarios I can think of. Questions on which parent's information goes on the FAFSA? Okay, yes, sir.
Well, married parents, both their information is going regardless of what the contribution is, right?
Yes, for married parents, do both parents' information go on the FAFSA regardless of the contribution? The answer is yes. The marriage combines them and therefore both parents go on. Okay, great. At the bottom of the screen there, you can see that the FAFSA is going to ask a couple of additional questions. The first one is about the number of people in your household. This is the number of people in your household that either the student or the parent or parents that are providing the financial support, this is all the people that those people support. So think about that for a moment. You've got a family of 5, right? The student going to college, parent number 1 and parent number 2, and then 2 kids, 2 other kids. That's a household of 5 because those parents support all 5. In another scenario, if you have the student, the parents, 2 kids, and grandma, as long as grandma is receiving 50% of her support from either the student or the student's parents, she is considered a member of the household. Now, why is that important? Because the more people that are in your household, the more financial aid you can be eligible for. Think about it this way. If you have a family income of $100,000 and your family is a family of 3, and my family has $100,000 and we're a family of 6, then the federal government's algorithm gives my family more financial aid. So we want to make sure we're counting every single person in the household that receives financial support from either the student or the parents. You can see it also asks the question, how many students are going to college next year? The reason that question is asked, none of us know. Because like I told you a minute ago, last year they changed the rules, so I feel like this is just kind of like a small form of torture from the federal government. Yes, ma'am?
So, for example, I have a daughter in college right now, and I have another one who's a senior who's getting ready to go to college. Do I count her as my older daughter who's in college, and the member of my household?
Before I tell everyone your question, how old is your older daughter? Say again. 20. So the question down front is, if I have multiple children, and multiple children are going to college, in this case, one of them is 18 years old and one of them is 20, are both of them in the household? And the answer is yes. Both children in that scenario are in the household. Now, if you happen to have a child that is living with you who meets one of those criteria that makes them independent, over the age of 24, married, has their own child, but they happen to be living in your house, well, for financial aid purposes, the federal government considers them independent from you. So even though they happen to be living in your house, they do not provide parental information. But because of the age of your two children, you would include it. Sir?
So it sounds like there's a lot of personal information on this process, especially there's some social security number. Right? How safe is this system? Like, who receives this system? Is that like special trained people? Receive this data?
Yeah, it's a hard question, but the question down front is, we're going to put a lot of sensitive information on this online form. How safe is this form? Who processes it? Who has access to your information? I'm going to answer that question for you, but remember, I am not a representative of the federal government. This is a form that's hosted by the federal government. It is owned by the Department of Education, an agency of the federal government. It is produced by a private organization, whichever the lowest bidder was, to create the form, but then it belongs to the federal government. Every year, for as long as I've been doing this, which is more than 20, the form has been extremely secure. There hasn't been data breaches relative to the information that's provided on a FAFSA. Then there was last year. Last year, I think I already told you, the FAFSA came out early, people filled it out, it was broken, people's information disappeared. We don't know where it went. That was the first time that's ever happened because the federal government made big old changes to the form and basically broke it. This year we have been told by the federal government that will not happen again. They have purposefully delayed the debut of the form to December 1st, as we were talking about earlier, simply for the purpose of making it more safe and secure. So the only thing I can tell you is that it's always typically been secure. Last year was a bad year, and the federal government tells us that it will be secure again. I think there was another, yes, sir.
So I have a special question. If you have a special needs child who's over 24, but the siblings are applying for college, will that still be counted as dependent or not?
Yes, the question is, if I have someone else in my household that is over the age of 24 that is still dependent on me, the example was a special needs student, are they still considered in my household because I'm providing the financial support? The answer is yes. The 24 makes that person independent on their own for financial aid. So if that other person, if that 24, 26, 28-year-old is going to college, they are independent from you. But if they're not going to college and you're providing their financial support, it doesn't matter how old they are. Anywhere from 24 to grandma, they are all in the household.
For example, if the special needs child is older, is going to community college, is taking one of the courses, being paid for by the parent, right? Would that still be, and I still report them as a dependent of the next child?
Yep, okay, so that's different. So the minute that that other person goes to college and is a financial aid applicant, they are independent from you. They're their own family. Doesn't matter their neurodiversity or what have you, they are their own family for financial aid. So they are not in your family, and you are not providing their support. They are their own financial aid application, and you and your other child are a separate financial aid application.
But I can't claim that as a dependent. How many people are dependent on? So I guess my question is about, if you have a second child who is neurotypical, applying for college, like you said, depending on the number of dependents that you have in the family, and the age that you get adults, like,
If you don't mind, I'm going to ask that you stay afterwards. This is a pretty specific case. The questions that are down front are in the same vein as the last couple, which is about that additional person that's in the household that is over the age, over the independency age of 24, and whether or not they are considered in the household for your new 18-year-old child. But there's some really unique things that I'm hearing that I think we need to talk one-on-one. Other questions? All right, let's keep going. Yes, sorry.
so if a person is on visa, the student is on visa, then we need to fill up for FAFSA and a master.
A student that is on a visa, do they complete the FAFSA and the MASPA? So the MASFA is the Massachusetts Financial Aid Application, and the FAFSA is the federal financial aid application. They are both applications. Anyone can complete them. So anyone can complete them whatsoever because it's just simply an online form that you're putting information into. But the question is, if you fill out the FAFSA, will you become eligible for financial aid? And that is only in the case of students that are citizens, permanent residents, or certain asylum categories. So if you're here on an educational visa, work visa, religious visa, any kind of visa, you can fill out the FAFSA, yes you can, but you will almost definitely be ineligible for federal financial aid.
You cannot even fill the FAFSA, because you cannot create an FSA ID or SSN, and a student will not have an SSN.
It is more complicated to get an FSA ID if you are on a visa. You can obtain an FSA ID without a social security number, but it typically causes you to, again, have a complicated completion of the FAFSA and be ineligible. So yes, it does discourage you to complete it, but you can complete it, you just probably will not be eligible if you're on any kind of visa. All right, let's keep going, folks. We're now, let's see, second slide of what information is going on the FAFSA. We have already figured out that we're putting identifiable information about the student, we're putting information about the parent, but now we're getting to the good stuff, the financials. For each person that's filling out the FAFSA, remember it's the student and at least one parent, maybe two parents, we're going to be including the information that's up here on the screen. Information about student income and parent income. Now the FAFSA, for students that are going to college next year, the FAFSA is specifically looking for a very specific tax year, and that tax year is 2023. So if you're filling out the FAFSA, again, for your student going to school in September of 2025, the information you're putting on the FAFSA right now is the calendar year income from 2023, not 2024. That information is going to be both your taxed and untaxed income. Now your taxed income is very obviously on your tax return, so you can see from your tax return what that income was in 2023. You can also use a tool that is built into the FAFSA called an IRS data retrieval tool, which is something that reaches out from the FAFSA, goes into the IRS, and pulls all your information into the FAFSA for you, populates most of the FAFSA, makes it very easy. That's your taxed income. There may be some untaxed income that you did not include on your tax return in 2023, and I am here as the dutiful person that I am to tell you that you are supposed to include that in the FAFSA. Untaxed income from 2023. Now, how the Department of Education is going to know what your untaxed income was in 2023, I don't know, but I'm here to tell you you're supposed to include it. We're also going to include information about assets, those things that you own that have value. Now, in this case, we are only talking about assets that are either owned by the student or parents or benefit the students or the student or parents. We are not including here assets that belong to grandma, to grandpa, to your other children. This is only income and assets that belong to the student going to college, the one filling out the FAFSA, and the parents. And those assets include pretty much anything that has value. You see some very obvious examples in that top bullet, right? CDs, checking accounts, investment portfolios, all the things that have value. If you own property, that property has a value. And in all of the cases of all of the assets, we are only including the net value, which means if you own a property, let's say a property that costs $800,000, but you have a $600,000 lien against it, then their net value of your asset is going to be $200,000, and we only include net asset values. Yes?
I have two questions. One is, what's untaxed income? I don't know how that exists. And two is, says that savings accounts but not loans for other children, so 505.9 for both children, only include the one that's named for the one on that FAFSA, right? Or no?
Yes, so the two questions. First question is, what is untaxed income? And it is just about anything that is not taxable or is not known to the federal government to be taxed. So there is some income from nonprofits, there is some income from churches, there is some income from foreign entities. that can be untaxed, and there's also the income that you didn't tell the federal government about that didn't get taxed, maybe tip income, etc. All of that, the federal government expects you to report. And again, some of those untaxed income, I'm not so sure how the federal government would know that, but you should get some, it's fun. The second question was about savings accounts. And remember, we said we are only talking about assets, all of these assets, that are in the name of the student or the parents, or that are eventually going to benefit the students or the parents. So the question was, if I have a savings account in another child's name, is that an asset that goes in the FAFSA? And the answer is no.
Actually, I was talking about the 529 accounts, the 529 college savings account, which is my asset, but I have it made one for one child and one for the other.
Yep. So the specific account that she's referring to is a 529 plan. 529s are college savings plans. There's other kinds of college savings plans, U funds, all kinds of fun things. But if it's a savings account, 529 or any other savings account, if it is in the student's name, it is the student's asset and it belongs in the FAFSA. But if it is in the other child's name, or if the primary beneficiary is the other child, it is not an asset on this FAFSA. That goes for all assets. There are some assets that we are not going to include on the FAFSA, and you see them there in the third bullet. The primary home, if you own a home, no matter how much it's worth, no matter what the net value of it is, the federal government excludes the primary home. Any kind of retirement, and that is every kind of retirement. So if you can think of a kind of retirement, if your retirement is different than everybody else's, yes, retirement is excluded. So 403, 401, pension, any kind of annuity that you've already got set up, unless you're receiving income from it already, any type of retirement is excluded, and any kind of life insurance, and yes, that is any kind of life insurance. Term, life, employer, non-employer, all life insurance, all retirement in the primary home is out. So, at each one of these programs, sometimes during the open sessions, sometimes in the questions afterwards, I get asked, how do I hide my assets? Because I want to not seem like I'm as rich, I want to receive more financial aid. And there's lots of ways to do that, most of which are illegal. But the one that is legal is what you see right here. There's 3 ways to have your assets legally ignored. Life insurance, retirement, home. So if you have something that has a great deal of value, an Airbnb that you paid off and you're getting income from now, if you want that asset to legally disappear, you sell that Airbnb and you add a wing to your house. Or you sell that Airbnb and you put all of it in retirement. And poof, just like that, the asset goes away. Earlier we said that all the income information that you're going to be putting on the FAFSA comes from the calendar year of 2023. But your asset information comes at the moment you fill out the FAFSA. So December 1st is still 3 weeks away. You want to sell an Airbnb, go for it. And then you can hide that income, legally hide that income in your home or in your retirement. Last one, and this one hurts for our divorced or separated parents. If you are a divorced or separated biological or adopted parent and you are providing more than 50% of your student support, then your income is going on the FAFSA with your student. But the biological or adopted parent that did not provide more than 50% of the support, their information is not going on the FAFSA. The only part of their income that is the child support that you receive. So if you are the biological or adoptive parent that is providing your student with more than 50% of their support, and you're receiving child support, then that is considered an asset. You do report received child support on the FAFSA. And last but not least, before I take the question, is most debt, I shouldn't say most, some debt is not included on the FAFSA. So we're going to include information about income and assets, but what about that big debt I have? I have credit card debt, I have a car loan, I have other student loans, I have medical bills. Most debt is not included on the FAFSA. The only debt that's included on the FAFSA is debt that's directly assessed against an asset. So when you're calculating that net value of the asset, if there's a mortgage or a lien or something against that asset, it's included there. But any kind of revolving debt, any kind of debt that isn't against a certain asset is not included on the FAFSA. Yes, ma'am? Sorry. I did one of these presentations earlier today. It's been a long day. I need that water. Are IRAs a form of retirement? The answer is I want you to check with your financial advisor, because there are ways in which IRAs can be set up that are absolutely retirement, and there are ways in which they are not. That is something that depends on the IRA that you have. Yes, sir?
Mortgage on the primary home?
What on the primary home?
Mortgage. Mortgage debt on the primary home.
Yes, if you have a mortgage on the primary home, that mortgage is not going to appear on the FAFSA anywhere because it's not being assessed against a debt, against an asset that's included on the FAFSA. So anything related to that primary home, the value of it and the debt against it is ignored, not on the FAFSA. Thank you, good question.
Secondary homes in the negative value, is that considered a debt?
Good question. Oh, yeah, good question. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. If you have an asset that has a negative value, if you're upside down on an asset, is that negative value included on the FAFSA? And the answer is no. An asset cannot have less than 0 value when you're entering an asset on the FAFSA. Now, you can put 0, but it wouldn't say take away from the value of other assets. Yes, sir?
How about just savings?
One more time?
Health savings accounts?
A health savings account. Health savings account. If you have a health savings account, it is a savings account. And so any savings account is going to be an asset. Now, your health savings account might not have that much in it, depending on where it is on the revolution. But if it has a value on the day that you complete the FAFSA, the value of it, because it is a savings account, is considered an asset and does go on the FAFSA. All the way in the back.
So the savings account is the primary beneficiary like other child. So that account we have to include in the FAFSA,
Did you say the other child?
other child.
Yes. So a savings account that the beneficiary or the owner of the savings account is the other child, the child that's not filling out the FAFSA, that belongs to the other child and is not included on the FAFSA. So another way that you can very legally move money around if you want it to be ignored is if you have the prerogative to move money from your child that's going to college into a savings account that belongs to the child that's not going to college, then that is excluded from the FAFSA.
So the
Yes.
savings account under my name, but the primary beneficiary is the other child. So we can exclude that, right?
Good question. So there are numerous ways in which savings and various assets can belong to two people at one time. So in the case that was described in the back, it is owned by the parent, but the primary beneficiary is the student that is not going to college. The ownership or the beneficiary qualifies that asset as belonging to that individual. So if the savings account was in grandma's name and your other student was the beneficiary, it would be excluded. But because you are the owner of the asset, the savings account, it goes on as an asset because you are the owner. Again, all assets are whether you or your student are the beneficiary or the owner. Yes?
Can we deduct the rental?
Sorry, one more time?
Can we deduct the rental, what we are paying for the apartment?
Can you deduct rent? Was that the question? Can you deduct rent?
Can we deduct what we are paying for the living?
The question is, can you deduct rent that you are paying? And the answer is no.
What happens if you make a mistake for customer? For example, if you make a mistake like an IRA account, which is not considered a retirement account, you make a mistake on that, what is the consequence?
Yeah, the question is, what if I make a mistake? Well, if you make a mistake and don't catch it and submit the FAFSA, then the FAFSA is going to go off to all of your colleges, they're going to get it, and they're going to make a financial aid decision based on that incorrect information. Now, at any point, you can go back in and correct the FAFSA. You can go back in a second time, a third time, and change things. That's your prerogative, the option that you have. But if your college already has the first one, then not only do you have to make that change, but you probably also need to call your college and say, hey, I just made a change. And what the college does is it downloads your second FAFSA or your third FAFSA and reconsiders you for financial aid. If, on the other hand, you realize that you made a change the minute that you submitted it, you can go right back in immediately, make that change, and resubmit. It typically takes FAFSAs minimum 4 days, sometimes 4 weeks to get to your college. So when you submit it, you're submitting it to the federal government, they do their thing with it, and then they send it off to the college later on. So if you catch it immediately, you can go right in, make the change, and you probably don't have to call your college. But if it's weeks go by, you want to call the college after you make that change. All right, let's keep going, folks. We have a lot to get to. We have just been talking about the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid that's required by which colleges? All of them. No matter which college you're going to, they're going to want the FAFSA if you want financial aid. The CSS profile, however, is a completely separate, completely different financial aid application. That's right, there are more than one financial aid application. And if the FAFSA is required by every single college nationwide, and the CSS profile is required of some, does that mean that some colleges want 2 financial aid applications? The answer is yes. So we're going to only be completing this CSS profile for the few colleges that require it. It's only a few hundred nationwide, not all of them. You can see a list of which colleges require it on the website that you see at the top of the screen. You can also usually pretty easily find out from your college. So if your student is looking at UVM is going to tell you right up front whether or not they require this additional financial aid application. Again, most colleges nationwide do not require this one. This is required by a very small minority of colleges. Now, which colleges require the CSS profile? It is typically your more expensive institutions. Think of Amherst College. Anyone considering Amherst? Amherst College. Ah, one person, good. Amherst College is one of the most expensive colleges in the country. However, and they have one of the lowest acceptance rates in the country. So it's, I forget, $80,000, $90,000 a year to go there, but they only admit 5% of their students. But the good news is, if you get into Amherst College, they guarantee to meet all the financial need that you have. So, when they make that guarantee, guess what they want? They want more information, and that's what the CSS profile provides to them. The CSS profile is available to you now. It does not wait until December 1st. I think it came out October 1st. And it is not free. You see the prices up there on the screen. You have to fill out, just to complete the FAFSA and send it to one college, it's $25, $16 for each college after that. And this is a private organization form, where the gentleman asked a moment ago about the privacy and protection in the FAFSA. That FAFSA belongs to the federal government. This belongs to the same people as the SAT. This CSS profile is completed again by the student. It is also completed by the parent that provides more than 50% of the student support. And it is completed by the parent that does not provide 50% of the support. So this is very different than the FAFSA. The CSS profile wants a whole financial picture of the student. Not just the parent with whom the student lives, not just the parent that gives most of the support, but both biological or adoptive parents. Additionally, if biological or adoptive parents are remarried, if there are step parents, then those people's information are typically required. And each college that uses this application can require additional information. In many cases, many of the colleges that use the profile, they are also looking for all other assets that are at all related to the student, even if they are in a third party's name. So this is where grandma and grandpa come in. If grandma and grandpa have been saving for your student's education, and any type of beneficiary for any of those funds is your student, the CSS profile, depending on how the colleges use it, may require that information as well. So you can see this is much more robust. The CSS profile is completed every year, just like the FAFSA, and it is provided to only a select few colleges that require it, not all. Yes?
When you're filling out these applications, like when it comes to the numbers, can you round it? Like, do you estimate it, or do you have to put the exact numbers?
The question is, on these financial aid applications, you have to be extremely accurate, extremely specific on the various income and asset amounts, or can you round? And the short answer is, both of these applications are completed using really the honor system. Because you're doing this at home in your jammies, right? This is not, nobody's standing next to you making sure it's 100% right when you do it. However, with both of these financial aid applications, there are processes that come later that could require verification of the information you put on there, in which case you have to provide documentation to show that everything was right. And that's where I would say my advice to you is be as accurate as you can. Yes?
At least it said 2023,
Yes.
not 2024.
Yes, the income information that goes on the FAFSA and the CSS profile is from the tax year, calendar year of 2023, and the asset information on the application is the day that you fill out the FAFSA and the profile.
And what if the non-custodial parent refuses to fill out it?
Yeah. This is a tough question. What happens if a parent or some other party that's required to provide information on a financial aid application refuses to do so? With all of the financial aid applications, you have the ability to complete it basically however you want, right? It's the honor system. You're doing it at home. Nobody's checking to make sure you're doing it the right way. So, if you have to submit, say, the profile without the non-custodial or non-financial supportive parents' information, you can do that. You can submit it with all zeros. But when it gets to your college is probably going to ask some hard questions, like where is the rest of this information? In some cases, a college will let you explain that the non-custodial parent is not providing information, and then allow them to move forward with putting together a financial aid package for you. At other colleges, the lack of information will stop the whole process. And so you want to provide as much complete information as you can, and then have a conversation with your colleges about anything that's missing. Good question. Yes, sir?
So how do we make sure that, who that account has the balance may change over the period, right?
Yes. How do we determine the amount of a balance of an account, say, at the time you fill out the FAFSA? Because the balance of an account could change over time. And the answer is that the information you put on the FAFSA and on the CSS profile as it relates to an asset is the value of that asset at the moment you fill out the application. So if that means that there's $10,000 in your savings account today, but tomorrow it's $11,000, it is what you put on the FAFSA the day that you complete it. The question is, if you are chosen for a process called verification and you have to confirm the information that you put on the FAFSA, how do you confirm the exact amount that you put on the day that you completed the FAFSA? You provide the most accurate documentation that you can. In some cases, that is a bank statement that includes bank balances throughout time so that they can see the actual day. Most colleges are not going to be looking that hard at you unless they see, a $10,000 swing. But if it's, $100 off, $500 off, they're not going to look that hard at it.
What about the investments, stock investments, they pay every day?
Yep. Same answer. So the question was, what about other assets that have the value changing every day? What about those? Exact same answer. You provide the accurate information you can that day on the honor system, and then the colleges will ask for documentation. Provide the best documentation you can, and if the college accepts that, that's fantastic. If they don't, they'll ask for more. Yes, sir.
So, supposing you put in the amount of that particular day, stock, savings account, or whatever, and then it's a while, so you said the amount will go up, but it's basically on that day. But if there is a system where, for example, you want stock or something, does the college reconsider the fact that you actually lost money?
Yes, great question. So the question is, what happens if things change, and in this scenario, change for the worse? We're going to fill out the FAFSA. Let's say we fill it out on December 15th. And on that day, we're going to indicate that our income was whatever it was in 2023. Let's say $50,000. And we're going to include information about our assets. Maybe we had an investment portfolio that was worth $20,000. But then, in 2024, something bad happened. There was a loss of a job. The shifts got reduced. God forbid there was a death in the family. All of that changes the the potential, earning potential, and perhaps the value of your assets significantly. What happens then? Well, remember, the FAFSA is an application. It only wants information that it asks for. And the FAFSA is going to ask you for income information from 2023 and asset information on the day you fill out the FAFSA. After that, in order to provide an explanation, in order to provide documentation perhaps of a change like the gentleman described, that's a conversation. That's where you're now going to call your colleges and say, hey, listen, things have changed. I had a death in the family, I had a reduction of hours, and I really want to demonstrate that I don't have the same type of income and assets that I did when I filled out the FAFSA. Unfortunately, because you might be sending your FAFSA to multiple colleges, 5, 6, 7 colleges, you have to do that 5, 6, 7 times. You have to call each college and follow the instructions that they give you on how to document what your change was. MIFA suggests that you do this though, because it does have the potential to change your financial aid. Now, if your income in 2023 was $100,000, and in 2024 it changed to $90,000, that's probably not going to affect your financial aid eligibility. If your income changed from $100,000 to $20,000, now that's something you should call your college about, because they will be able to reconsider you and possibly make you eligible for more financial aid. Good question, thank you. All right, let's keep going. Last but not least, there are other kinds of financial aid applications out there. Some colleges have their own. If you're thinking about going to Anna Maria College, I think Anna Maria still requires its own Anna Maria financial aid application. And because the FAFSA is required by every college everywhere, at Anna Maria, you have to do the FAFSA and their own application. Now, after you apply, we've already talked about this, your information is going to be sent off by the federal government to all of your colleges. It typically does take many days, in some cases multiple weeks, for it to actually arrive at your college. So if you complete it and you think there was something wrong with it, you can absolutely call your college to find out, but they might not have your FAFSA immediately. As an example, filling it out December 1st, they might not get it until the holidays. So you do want to call your college if you do have those changes of circumstance and any other review you want to have of your financial aid application. Once the colleges have your financial aid application, they're going to start putting together a financial aid package for you. That's the next topic we're about to get to, is how does that happen and how do we actually get financial aid? But this is what happens right after you apply. We've already talked about verification. Verification is a process that only some students are selected for. Think about this like an IRS audit. When you're filling out your taxes, you can fill out your taxes pretty much any way you want to, right? You submit those, but sometimes you get that audit call. Well, that's what verification is. The FAFSA gets completed as honestly as you can, but there are some students, typically 1/3 of American college students are selected for verification, in which case your college is federally required to ask you for documentation. They might ask you for tax forms, divorce documents, asset documentation like we were talking about a moment ago, just to prove that the information that was on your FAFSA was accurate. If you do get these requests, you do want to respond to them, because if a college does not receive something that they're federally required to ask for, they are federally required to stop working on your financial aid application. So if you are chosen for verification and ask for documents, you want to go ahead and submit those. That will typically happen after your not typically, it will always happen after your FAFSA or your profile is submitted and after they receive it. Yes, ma'am?
Verification worksheet, is that something they send you?
Yeah, so one of the items up on the screen is, refers to a verification worksheet. There are verification worksheets, standardized verification worksheets that the federal government produces and lets colleges use those. Some colleges use them, some colleges use their own. But basically what it is, it's a document that allows you to fill in information to triple confirm, double confirm that the information you put on the FAFSA is accurate. This won't usually be for income or assets. It might be for something like the number of people in your household. You said that there were 6 people in the household. Please fill out this verification worksheet to double confirm that it actually is 6. That's just an example. Yes, sir?
When you're talking about the college sending the FAFSA and CSS, only you are talking about only the college which has already accepted the student, right?
Oh, good question. So the question is about these financial aid processes. Do they only affect students that are accepted for admission to the college, not necessarily all students? And the answer depends on the college. Some colleges will only process financial aid for students that are admitted, accepted, planning to go to that college, and other colleges will do this whole financial aid process for every single student that sends a FAFSA in. So it will depend on the college. You'll have different experiences at different colleges. Yes, sir.
All of these questions are very good questions, and I have really interest on that. Can you please present and ask these questions?
We'll make our best effort. Everybody feel free to ask your questions, but I like your thought. I like getting out of here too. Is it Thursday? Yeah, it's football night. I want to go home and watch football. All right, we're going to keep moving, folks. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you. High fives later on, okay? All right, real quick, I want to point out to you that every college, whether it's a expensive school, small school, big school, cheap school, 2-year, 4-year, every single college is required to have a financial aid office with qualified financial aid counselors that are able to talk to you in an informed way about all the things that we've been talking about here tonight. So please know that whether you consider Quinn-Sigmund Community College or Harvard, they all have financial aid offices that you should feel comfortable contacting, emailing, visiting to ask those questions. I'm also going to give you contact information tonight for MIFA, because MIFA is not associated with any colleges, and they also are very qualified and can answer all of your financial aid questions. Okay, so we have made it through the financial aid application. We now know what financial aid is. We now have applied for financial aid. The colleges have the financial aid applications, and now it's time to put together a financial aid package. And so what's going to happen is your financial aid office is going to use a couple of figures, a couple of terms that are really important for you to know. So we're going to have another little vocab lesson on 2 terms, and the first one is cost of attendance. If you and I were at a backyard barbecue right now and I asked you what's the college cost of attendance, you might tell me it's the amount that comes on the bill. It's the amount that the college bills me. Well, in this case, I want you to know this term because that's only partially correct. The cost of attendance that's used for calculating financial aid is the cost that the college bills you, the tuition, the fees, the room, the board, the things that will actually be charges on your bill, that's the green boxes, and some indirect costs associated with going to college, like books and supplies. If you go to college and you pay tuition and fees to go to Worcester Polytech, Worcester Polytech is probably not going to give you books. You have to buy those books out of your pocket. And so that's an indirect extra cost. In order to get to college, you have to get yourself there. Drive, gas, public transportation, flying across the country to UCLA, whatever your transportation costs are, that's an extra cost of college. So, the cost of attendance that's used for calculating financial aid is not just the direct cost of the school, it's the direct cost and indirect costs. So let's just do a little scenario here. Anybody thinking about going to UMass? Oh, a few, good for you. So UMass right now is probably $27,000, $28,000 a year, something like that. Let's round up to 30 to make it easy. In order to go to UMass, the bill that you'll get before financial aid at UMass Amherst or UMass Boston is going to be $29,000, $30,000. That's this amount, tuition, fees, room and board. But the cost of attendance to go to UMass is more than just $30,000, it's all this stuff. So the cost of attendance at UMass might be $45,000. See how that's different? Right? It's $30,000 for tuition, fees, room and board, but then they add in all these indirect costs, so it gets up to a higher amount. So let's say that the cost of attendance for UMass is way more than its direct cost, $45,000. Now let's learn another vocab term, student aid index. For anyone that's been doing this for a while, if you've sent other students to college before a few years ago, you remember this as the expected family contribution. The federal government changed the name of it, but all it is a number. When you put all that information into the FAFSA, remember the FAFSA is just an application. You're just submitting information. And that information, the size of your household and the income and the assets, it all goes into the federal government and goes into a formula, goes into an algorithm. And that algorithm, that formula spits out a number for every single college student, and that number is called a student aid index. Now you see some details about the student aid index on the screen there, but I can basically tell you that if your income and assets is high, then your SAI, your student aid index, is going to be high. And conversely, if your income or assets are low, then your SAI is going to be low. Right? So that's how we calculate those SAIs. They might come out and you might receive an SAI with your income of $20,000 and I might receive an SAI with my lower income of 5,000. So cost of attendance and student aid index. Now, why do we need to know those two terms? Because they are the secret sauce for figuring out how much financial aid you might receive. And this is it. This is what colleges do. Really complicated formula. We take the cost of attendance for the college. Remember at UMass, we said that that's 45,000. We subtract each student's student aid index. Remember, every student aid index is different. Yours is different than mine, different than his, different than hers. And what's left is the amount of financial aid you could receive. The amount of need-based financial aid you could receive is the cost of attendance at that college minus your student aid index. So let's see what that looks like. At this college, 45,000. This is UMass Boston, right? UMass Boston. At UMass Boston, they know that the cost of attendance is $45,000. That's the direct cost plus the indirect cost. Total cost of attendance for UMass, $45,000. Now they start going to work on a financial aid package for you. They've received your financial aid application. They got that student aid index out, and your student aid index came out at $5,000. So real quick math, how much financial aid might we receive? 40,000, right? Cost of attendance minus student aid index equals financial aid eligibility, or maximum financial aid eligibility. So at this college, at UMass Amherst, I could receive $40,000 in financial aid. So now the college starts going to work. They know how much financial aid they can give you, and let's see what they do. Well, they started off and they gave you a grant of $17,000. They gave you a scholarship of $10,000. That is $27,500 in free money, gift money, money you don't have to pay back. Right? Now, how much does UMass cost? We said 30, right? About 30? Look at that. They've already given you $27,000 in free money. So the cost of UMass, just the amount you're going to pay out of pocket, is already down to $2,500. But they're not done. Because they don't have to stop there with financial aid. They can give you as much financial aid up to that cost of attendance. So the college keeps going. They offer you that student loan. That direct student loan, the one we looked at the very beginning of tonight. The really good loan. But you can only get up to $5,500. That's the max as a freshman. So they've given you what they could. They give you some work study. That's nice. Now you have an option to get a job on campus. Does the work study come off the bill? Not usually. Usually goes in the pocket for pizza. So you've got $5,500 in a loan and $27,500 in grants and scholarships. You've got your whole balance covered here and work study, and then they stopped. The college tried, right? They gave you a lot of financial aid. It's a pretty good financial aid package. But they didn't give you the whole $40,000 that they could have. Now this is common. It's common for a college to give you a lot of financial aid or some financial aid, but not max out completely. The maxing out comes earlier. When we were asking about financial aid displacement, right? We were asking, would any of this financial aid be taken away if I got a big old scholarship? Well, now let's say you've got this financial aid package and in comes a $30,000 scholarship. Well, now something is going away because that would be too much financial aid, right? All this plus a new $30,000 scholarship would be too much. That's when your financial aid displacement comes in. But for this is a pretty good financial aid package. It's going to help me cover most of the cost of going to UMass Boston. So now let's look at this a little bit differently. Because remember, you're not looking at one college, right? Your students applying to 3, 4 different colleges. And you're sending your FAFSA information to 3, 4 different colleges. So in this scenario, now you've got back 3 different financial aid packages. College A, B, and C. Now every college is $45,000, so they're all the same price. Your SAI never changes, right? You get your SAI, it's like your bib number for a marathon, right? It's just the number you go to every college with. So at every college they cost $45,000, SAI is $5,000. I could get $40,000 of financial aid at all 3 of these colleges. So let's see what they did. College A gave me a whole bunch of financial aid, and look at that. They gave me the most financial aid I could possibly want. They maxed out. They can't give me $1 more. College C, on the other hand, they gave me a little bit of financial aid, but not enough, and I still got a big old gap. So, which one of these colleges is more affordable? College A, right? Which college is your student going to fall in love with? Yeah. So this is what we're going to do come April. Your student's going to pick the college on all kinds of things, right? They're going to pick it based on major, on sports, on clubs, on organizations, on where the girlfriend's going. They're going to pick it on all the good stuff, right? But this is one of the factors that you're going to help them understand. You can go to college C if you want to, but it's going to cost more. Let's look at it even a different way. Here we are, we got 3 different colleges. They all cost the same possibility of getting $40,000. And all 3 of them, college A, B, and C, every single one of them gave me $35,000. Your student's going to be like, sweet, I get to pick, and I like college whatever. But if you look a little closer, this $35,000 is made up of mostly scholarships. This one's a hodgepodge, and this one, no scholarships. Look at that. What's that? College C thinks you're borrowing. Is that the plan? Maybe. In some families, that's the plan. Parents want to borrow. But maybe it's not the plan for you, and in this case, the school is assuming that you're going to pay that $40,000 bill with a $30,000 parent loan. Now, students can qualify for student loans just by existing, right? I'm just a U.S. citizen and going to college. I get a loan. But us parents, do we just get loans? Nope. I have to apply for that. I have to qualify for that. And if I don't qualify for it, let's say that my debt-to-income ratio or credit worthiness is off, and I get denied for that loan. Now what? Now at college C, I've got nothing. I've got a little loan to help me out. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. That whole bill is now on my back. So this is the kind of stuff you got to pay real close attention to, because you're going to get financial aid packages in February, in March, and April, and some of them are going to look wacky like this. And you got to look real close at what is in those financial aid packages. Now, it is extremely common for you to receive financial aid packages and then have a gap left to go. We saw it a minute ago, right? We saw it back here, where in this case, the college tried, but they left you with a $5,000 gap. Well, if that happens to you, how do you pay that $5,000 gap? Well, there's a couple of options. Of course, if you've got some savings, you've got that $529 hanging out there, and you want to use it to pay from past income, the savings that you have, that's great. Maybe a little student savings, maybe a little parent savings to help pay down that bill. Maybe you don't have the savings, or you don't want to dip into it yet, so you want to pay some of this $5,000 remaining balance a different way. How about you pay it in your present income? And we call that present income, and that's more of a payment plan, where almost every college will let you take a portion or all of the remaining balance that you have and break it up into payments. Maybe an 8-month payment plan, maybe a 10-month payment plan. But if you take this $1,000, or maybe even the whole $5,000, and break it up into some payments, is that a little bit more manageable? Does that make sense for your family? Do you want to pay out of that present income, the income that's coming into the house right now? And last but not least is future income. If this is not an option, and this is not an option, but I still want my baby to go to that school and I want to cover that bill, how else can I? Well, that's when we get into possibly some more educational lending, some borrowing. That could be an educational loan for the student. There are other educational loans out there other than the one I pointed out. There are parent loans out there if you can qualify. They are a qualification where you do have to qualify for those loans. But borrowing is a scenario that some families do explore to cover the remainder of that balance. Now, yes?
When the colleges let you do a payment plan, do you charge interest on that, or is it?
Yeah, the question is, when you use a payment plan at a college, does the college charge you interest? And the favorite government answer is it depends. Every college does their payment plan differently. Some charge interest, some do not. Some have simply a joining or origination fee, some do not. But they're typically not extra burdensome. They want you to pay that bill. But there could, depending on the college, there could be interest. All right. This is probably my favorite slide of the whole night, folks. It is November what? November 7th? November 7th of your student's senior year, and in some cases, your student's junior year. And if you are the family that openly talks about money, if you and your kids talk openly about how much mom makes, or how much dad is in debt, or how much mom has on the credit card, or how much dad spent on the fishing weekend. If that's something you talk about openly, I'm impressed. That's not the way I grew up. The way I grew up, my parents would never even dream of telling me how much they made or how much debt they had or whether or not they could afford things or whether or not they couldn't. They hid it all. If that's the way your family is, that's okay. That's normal, you know. That's normal for some families. But this is a time where I tell you that having that hard conversation about what's affordable, how much can we afford, who's going to pay, is the student going to pay, is the parent going to pay, who's going to borrow, is the student going to take out the loans? Is the parent? Are we both going to do it? Those conversations are rough for some families. It's not a normal conversation for parents and students to have in some families. But I'm here to tell you tonight, in November, that conversation is uncomfortable. In May, when she has fallen in love with that school, and the only thing you can tell her is you're going to break her heart because you can't afford to send her there, that conversation is tears. So, if you already talk openly about money, fantastic. We're going to talk in a few minutes about things that you can do to save money, extra things you can do to save money on college. Good open conversation, I love it. Good for you. Keep having those conversations. If you don't and you don't like it, this is one of those times to bite the bullet. Bite the bullet in the fall, don't wait until the spring. Some other things to consider, we're going to talk about community college, we're going to talk about some of the things that can help you save money. We're going to also talk about some of the things that are going to cost you extra money. The second kid going to college, the third kid going to college. Maybe somebody's going to want to go to graduate school. Are you going to help them with that? Is that the plan? Or once they get their bachelor's degree, is junior on his own to pay for graduate school? All those conversations are great to have now while we're in high school. Don't wait until later on. So here are some great resources for you folks. In the state of Massachusetts, made huge investments in financial aid in the last 1.5 years. And they are right here at the top of the screen. Mass Educate is a brand new financial aid program that just got put into place in Massachusetts in August of 2024. And it supposedly makes community college completely free. That's right, community college. Anybody know a community college nearby? Quinsig? Quinsigamon Community College, with this new financial aid program, is supposed to be completely free, no cost, for any Massachusetts resident who doesn't already have a bachelor's degree. If you have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a doctorate, a legal degree, you can't receive this form of financial aid. But if you haven't gone to college before or you haven't completed a bachelor's degree, you can go to Quinsig or any other community college under Mass Educate for free. Mass Reconnect is an extremely similar program, just a little focused on older students over the age of 25. And Mass Grant Plus Expansion offers free and in some cases reduced costs at state universities. So if your student is thinking about Fitchburg State, Worcester State, Salem State, any of those campuses can be close to free or free under this second program, Mass Grant Plus Expansion. Huge investments in financial aid in Massachusetts the past couple of years, to the point now that your public campuses, UMass, state universities, community colleges, are either free or really close to free. Now, none of these are for private colleges. So if you're choosing to go to a private college, you can still get lots of financial aid at private colleges to make them affordable, but these that make college free, this is only at your public schools. The tuition equity law. The tuition equity law is what resulted in the MASFA. Remember talking about the MASFA earlier? That's the Massachusetts Financial Aid Application. It's available for undocumented and less documented students. That resulted from something called the tuition equity law. Tuition equity law was passed in the FY25 budget in Massachusetts, which basically makes state universities, community colleges, and, what's the one I'm missing, UMass campuses, in-state tuition for undocumented students that live in the state of Massachusetts as long as they have gone to a Massachusetts high school for 3 or more years. So if you are undocumented or minimally documented in Massachusetts, but you're a Massachusetts resident and you have gone to high school, this high school or any high school in Massachusetts for 3 years, you can receive in-state tuition. That's the tuition equity law. Mass transfer. Mass transfer is a program that's specific to Massachusetts that makes transferring of college credits easier than it was before. If anybody here went to college back in the day and happened to switch colleges, If you transferred or went to 2 different colleges, you might remember the horrific experience of trying to transfer credits from one college to the other, right? You took English at one college, tried to bring it to your new college, and the new college goes, nah, nope, not ours, we're not bringing it in. You start back at square one. The good news is, for public education, the state of Massachusetts has fixed that, and it's called mass transfer. Basically, what mass transfer does is it guarantees that if a student completes an associate's degree at any community college in Massachusetts, including Quincy, they are guaranteed admission at the state university or UMass campus of their choice, including the Eisenberg School of Business at UMass, guaranteed admission. They are also guaranteed 100% transfer of credits, which means not a single credit from your community college experience goes away, and the minute you step on that UMass or state university campus, you are a junior the day you arrived, no lost credits, and you get a discount off your tuition when you get to the state university or UMass campus. Mass transfer. Now, in some families, community college is out of the question. It's not, it's not on the table, it's not considered, and that's fine, that's okay. But if community college is in your realm of possibility, community college is free, and it's guaranteed transfer to the 4-year school, where basically you save the first 2 years and you only pay for the latter 2 years. Really awesome program. Tuition break. In any state, if you live in your state and go to school in your state, you pay in-state tuition at public campuses. That means that at UMass or Bridgewater State or Westfield State, we pay less because we live in Massachusetts. If somebody comes over from Connecticut or comes over from New Hampshire and wants to go to one of our state schools, that's okay, but they pay $8,000, $9,000 more because they don't live here. That's the same if you go over the state lines. So if your student wants to go to UNH or UMaine Orono or UConn, then they're going to pay more than the residents of that state. However, the tuition break program is available from an organization called NEBI, and I'm going to spell that out in a minute, so if you're interested in this, get your pens out. The tuition break program makes in-state or close to in-state tuition available at those out-of-state schools. So if your student's thinking about an out-of-state public school, you want to check this out because you could save $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 right off the top. The tuition break program is available from an organization called the New England Board of Higher Education. They are known by their acronym NEBI, and the website is nebhe.org. nebhe.org for NEBI and the tuition break program for close to in-state tuition outside of the state. Lots more resources, some of them from the Massachusetts in the portal, some of them from MIFA. Lots of resources here, folks. Really good stuff, and a lot of this stuff's brand new. This stuff didn't exist just 2-3 years ago. A few more free resources for you. FAFSA Day is a number of events, some of which happen in person at places like this, and some of which happen virtually. These are programs that invite people in to actually complete the FAFSA in person and help you do it. So you could go to a library, like a store, you walk in and make an appointment, where you go in and you can get free assistance with the FAFSA on your schedule, where you go in and make an appointment. It's like the H&R Block of FAFSAs. So you're walking in, you're making an appointment, you sit down in a cubicle, you're right next to a professional, fill out your FAFSA so that you have somebody right there with you to help you. Completely free educational opportunity centers. There's a whole list of them available at massedco.org. The closest one to this town is in Worcester. It's on Chestnut Street, right in the center of town. If you ever been to the Hanover Theater, it's 2 blocks away. And last but not least is MIFA Pathway. MIFA Pathway we've talked about a lot tonight. It is a lot of resources. We talked about the application manager. We've talked about some of the resources that are out there for financial aid assistance, financial aid questions and answers. Lots and lots of information at MIFA Pathway. Feel free to check it out, and you can also access MIFA Pathway through these QR codes. One of these QR codes leads to MIFA emails. Right now, you are getting all this information dumped on you like a fire hose. But this process is many months long. You might not remember all this in February or in March. These emails that they will send right to you from MIFA, these are emails that are emails. So on December 1st, guess what the email is going to say? Time to fill out the FAFSA. On January 1st, what's the email going to say? If you've had a change in circumstance, call your colleges. On February 1st, they're going to say, hey, have you finished those scholarship applications yet? Right? They're just real-time emails that come to you. They don't sell you anything. They don't take your information. You can come off anytime, but really good, really timely information as we go through this financial aid process. This is the same screen you saw at the beginning with a QR code to get to MIFA, as well as some social media access. Remember, MIFA is not associated with any college or university. It's a quasi-state agency that's only available for this purpose. So if you want to ask questions, but maybe you don't want to call your college for some reason, you don't want to know if you're going to tip them off to some financial aid displacement, you can call MIFA and ask them the question, and they keep the answer to themselves. Here's a phone number and an email, so you can get right in touch with MIFA directly. You can call them anytime, Monday through Friday, ask them any question. They're professionals, they'll give you advice. That is the end of our presentation tonight, folks. I am going to be here after the presentation for anybody that wants to ask questions, especially if you want to ask some questions maybe that you don't want to ask them out loud, feel free to come on down. Otherwise, you have a great resource in your guidance office. Not only do they post those scholarships that are going to be available after January, but they are a great resource to getting information about colleges and getting access to folks like me that help with financial aid. So on your way out tonight, make sure you say thank you. They brought this program in tonight, and they're a fantastic resource here at Shrewsbury High. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful night. If you have questions, come on down. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.